Deputy Kennedy. Kenny, sorry.
Thanks, Cohere. I'd like to welcome Rosemary, Yvonne and Carol to the committee. I haven't met you before. Certainly you have given a very harrowing account of your childhood and people of your generation who spent their childhood in institutions, and I think that's a chapter in Irish society that was very shameful. It has come out in the open and people recognise that now, and we're conscious of it. You, of course, had a double difficulty because you suffered racial abuse as well as the other types of treatment that was meted out to orphan children. And what I'm concerned about is, from your experience, the level of racism today. Sometimes in my constituency I will get parents who have parents with mixed race children who say that their children are being abused in the street, and there have been from time to time assaults on people of mixed race. Now, I don't know whether that is declining, or my own feeling is that it may be declining. When I was listening to you there, I remember I was a member of Dublin City Council in 1990 when the freedom of Dublin City was given to Nelson Mandela. And that year, 1990, was the year when the Irish football team were doing very well, and one of their star players was Paul McGrath. So people of mixed race, mixed Irish, have excelled in sports and in music and modelling and other careers. So that there is that side of it as well. What I would like to know from your experience, do you feel that enough, that there's more awareness of the question of racism and how it's a despicable form of behaviour, mainly attributed probably to ignorance? And do you think that enough has been done to ensure that we can reduce this kind of treatment, and that people of mixed race Irish should be better integrated into our society?
Yeah. Do you want to say?
Yes. I'd like to say something.
Sorry, Chair, is that okay? If Yvonne wants
I'd like to come in on that because you. Thank you, Deputy. Senator, excuse me. Whether
it's okay. It's okay.
Okay. You see, I think that it's not about having a mixed race person in a highlight, somebody who's a footballer, somebody who's a model, somebody who's famous for music, because I think this can be quite stereotyping. And also, that doesn't mean because somebody's successful, and as Anne said that herself, it's just because somebody's in the media doesn't mean, oh look, we are accepting mixed race Irish into society. We don't need to be successful in the public view, and i.e., does that mean we can only be accepted if you are of something to be looked at, if you are something that shows success? So what does success mean? It's not about being in a public domain. It's about being accepted for who you are, whether you are a celebrity or not. So being successful and being in the media is not an acceptance of colour. And I disagree with that. We accept because you are seen to be in the public domain as to be looked at, which is what we have been brought up as, the other to be looked at, to be looked upon. And so this does not mean that this is integration. Integration means that you accept people for who they are, whether disregarding of what they do for a living.
Okay. Well, I didn't mean to stereotype, and I'm sorry if you got that impression. No, what I was saying was that people like Paul McGrath and others, that they would be the kind of role model for every particularly young men or young boys. You can. It's cool.
Absolutely.
And you can be successful, and there's no, there are barriers, but you can overcome them.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make.
If I could come in, because I think it's a very good question, and I think Yvonne was highlighting from our perspective the importance of stereotyping, because we all our life, if you happen to have a different colour, particularly in Ireland, there's certain stereotypes that we would have fitted into. But I do certainly take your point, the importance of role models. And if we're talking about in today's society, if there's more or less racism, I can only go on certain experiences that people have shared with me, because actually I don't actually live in at the moment in Ireland. I live in London. But I have heard stories of where people have actually been subjected to racism, Nigerian families. And I suspect because the Irish government's treaty or the CEOD thing hasn't been rectified, there's no protection in law for somebody who's attacked and called names or attacked because of the colour of their skin. That is part of the problem that we see. Because in the UK, if somebody calls me a name, you know, incites hatred or whatever, it's because of my race, my colour, I can go to the police and that will be taken quite seriously.
Officially.
I suspect if it happened here, and I've heard this from a taxi driver recently was telling me a story where something happened to him. He says, I'm not going to go to the police because they're not going to take it serious. There's no laws. I think you're right. I think Irish society has become much more open. I'm amazed how cosmopolitan and wonderful Dublin City, this beautiful city, and it's wonderful to see so many different races. But I'm concerned and curious. Should someone be subjected to racism, how that would be dealt with in law, and how that would be dealt with from the point of view of the police, and how serious it would be taken. So part of the reason why we're here today is maybe is to raise up some of those issues. And you're right to highlight the people like Paul McGrath and role models, and you're right to highlight positive people who are mixed race. But for us growing up in institutional care, we were nobodies. You know, we didn't have anything to latch on to. We were never going to be famous or whatever. Who knows? But I'm just saying that if you look at our colleagues here all sitting in the gallery, and to me this is the most group of people I've seen in one place, in a place like the Dáil, mixed race Irish. Unless we were here today, you wouldn't know that these people existed. So it's kind of because of being brought up in institutional care, we had a disadvantage because of the way we were brought up, because of how our identity was kind of thrashed and the lack of identity. So it's a difficult question to answer, because you want to be positive and say that Ireland has moved on, and I believe it probably has. But for us, mixed race Irish, it probably hasn't, because we're still left with that legacy. I think that's the only way I can answer the question.
Open discussion is very important. Having an open discussion,
Yes.
and having a discussion which reveals the truth, and having a discussion which bears the reality of what happened, and not being frightened to say this has happened, and this is the way forward is to return to a path that is horrific. And I believe the way forward is not to highlight success and say, look how well we are doing. It's to go back, open, discuss, this happened, this is the effect of that. What are the effects of long-term racism? That is how we move forward.
Thank you.